I have been asked, more times than I can count, how a man like my brother came to kneel before a builder's daughter in a muddy field, beside a half-finished bridge. I will tell you exactly how it happened, because I was there, and because Caspian would never tell it honestly himself, not about the kneeling. He would begin 3 sentences before the relevant moment and talk around it until you forgot what you had asked. That is the Duke of Hawksmere's particular gift, filling a room with words that say very little. A sold crane ended that habit in him within a fortnight. My brother had ordered a new bridge across the Varn River. The old crossing had been swept away the previous autumn, and the tenants of 3 villages were fording the stream on horseback or waiting for the ferry that came twice a week, if it came at all. It was practicality, not generosity. Caspian had always been more comfortable with practicality. He engaged a building firm out of Derwick, and by April the timber frames were rising against the sky. My brother visited the site precisely once, declared the thing satisfactory, and returned to the house to attend to correspondence. The first morning Isolde Crane appeared on that riverbank, she came looking for work. Her father, Edmund Crane, had been the finest structural surveyor in 3 counties before a fever took him the previous winter. She had trained beside him since girlhood, reading his books, carrying his instruments, standing at his elbow through every inspection. But the firms in Derwick did not hire women, and the bill of her father's last illness had cleared what little they had saved. She walked 4 miles from the village of Ashencross and presented herself to the foreman, offering to assess the framing for a modest fee, because the foreman was a decent man, and because she had noticed something in the structure from the road that troubled her. The foreman, to his credit, listened. He let her walk the bridge. She walked it twice, then she asked to see the design drawings. Then she sat down on upturned crate, studied them for 20 minutes without speaking, and told the foreman that the central pier was positioned 3 feet too far east, placing it in a band of riverbed gravel rather than clay, and that the current load calculations did not account for the Varn spring surge, which ran at nearly double the summer rate. She told him that if they continued on the present design, the bridge would fail within 2 years, possibly 1. The foreman believed her. He sent a message to the house. My brother received it at the breakfast table, read it twice, and said, "Send the woman away." He told me this himself later, in the accounting of it, that he clearly hoped I would find less damning than it was. "I thought it was a scheme," he said. A woman walks onto my property with a set of complaints about a project that has cost me £1,100, and I am meant to simply believe her. I thought she was representing some rival firm. I told him that was not a charitable interpretation. He said no, it was not. He went down to the river himself that afternoon, and I rowed with him. He arrived to find Isolde Crane still there. She had not left, which surprised him. She stood on the eastern pier with a measuring rod, taking readings with the unhurried competence that makes experienced men pause. She was dressed in a grey wool coat, her dark hair tucked under a plain bonnet, and she did not look up when my brother's horse stopped on the bank. "Miss Crane," Caspian called out, in the voice he uses for tenants who have displeased him. She looked up then, without hurry. "Your Grace. You have alarmed my foreman and delayed my construction. I would like an explanation that takes less than 5 minutes." She climbed down from the pier, crossed the timber planking, and stopped at the bank. She was not tall, but she held herself very straight, and she did not lower her gaze. She opened the leather satchel at her side and produced a single sheet of paper, her own drawing, pencil-sketched, clean and precise. "The original specification placed the central pier here," she said, marking the page with her finger. "The river clay runs from this line westward. East of it is gravel bed, which shifts during high water. Your pier is in the gravel. In a spring surge, and the Varn surges hard, Your Grace, I have records from my father going back 22 years. The scour will undercut the footing. The pier will tilt. The decking will fail." Caspian looked at the drawing. He looked at the pier. He looked back at her. "The firm I employed," he said, "has built 40 bridges in this county. I am sure they have, she said. I am not questioning their competence generally. I am questioning this specific placement, which I believe was calculated from a survey that did not account for the seasonal riverbed variation. If you would like to dig a test bore here, she pointed to the spot, you will find gravel within 18 inches of the surface. If you would like to do it yourself, I will lend you the rod. She held the measuring rod out to him. I looked at my brother. My brother looked at the rod. He did not take it, but he did not dismiss her either, which was progress. He told her he would have his own surveyor examine her findings. She said that was sensible and gave him the drawing. She also gave him a written summary, 3 pages in a neat hand, which she had prepared that morning, apparently anticipating that he would not simply take her word for it. I will send for you when the survey is complete, he said. I will be in Ashen Cross, she said. He sent for her 2 days later. His surveyor had confirmed every point. The pier was in gravel. The load calculations were wrong. The Derwick firm's drawings had been made from a summer survey taken in a dry year. Caspian met her in the library. I was present, which he had not asked for but had not forbidden, and I watched him arrange his expression into something neutral before she came in. She entered without deference or nerves. She sat when offered a chair, set her satchel on her knee, and waited. Your assessment was correct, he said. Yes, she said, I know. That startled him. He had expected, I think, some note of gratitude at being acknowledged. She was not ungrateful. She was simply matter-of-fact about the evidence, which had never been in doubt on her side of the conversation. He asked her to propose a revised design. She had brought one. She spread it on the desk, a detailed drawing, the pier repositioned, the load calculations reworked, the approaches adjusted for flood clearance, and walked him through it. He asked questions that were sharp and precise, the questions of a man with a good mind who was accustomed to being the most informed person in the room. She answered every one. When he pushed back on the cost of repositioning the pier, she showed him, with figures, that it was cheaper than the alternative of rebuilding after a failure. He sat very still. You prepared all of this before I had agreed to listen. I prepared it when I saw the problem, she said. I could not unprepare it because you had not yet decided I was worth hearing. I looked at the window to hide my expression. Caspian was quiet. Then he said, What fee did you name to the foreman? She named it modest, almost insultingly modest for the work she had done. I will pay 3 times that, he said, and I would like to engage you for the duration of the construction as independent structural assessor. The Derwick firm will continue the work under your review. She looked at him carefully, measuring that with the same attention she had given the river. And if I identify further problems? Then you will tell me, and I will listen, he said. He paused, the first time. It was not an apology, but it was the closest my brother had come to one in my living memory, and I think she understood its weight. Something shifted in her expression, not softened exactly, more like a door unlocked. She stayed for the construction season. She came to the estate 3 times a week and sometimes more. She and Caspian argued about everything, the approach road, the timber grading, the railing specification, the width of the pedestrian walkway, which she insisted should be wider, and he called excessive until she pointed out that the tenants drove sheep across it on market days, at which point he conceded without grace, and she pretended not to notice. I watched him change. It happened in the way that real things happen, not in a single moment, but in a dozen small ones. The way he listened when she spoke, with a stillness he did not give anyone else. The way he had her drawings brought to the study and left them on the desk for days. The way he invented reasons for her to remain when a question had already been answered. He was not accustomed to not knowing what he was feeling. It made him short-tempered in the evenings and unusually courteous in the mornings, and he seemed unaware of either. The bridge was finished in early September. There was a small gathering on the opening day. Tenants, the vicar from Ashen Cross, the foreman and his crew. Caspian stood at the center of the bridge and gave the sort of brief, practical speech he preferred, crediting the build without naming names, which was exactly what everyone expected of him. Then he stepped back and found Isolde standing at the railing, looking at the water with the calm satisfaction of someone who had done a necessary thing well. He said something to her that I did not hear. She laughed, low and genuine, and that undid him. I saw it. He looked at her the way a man looks when he finally understands what he has been afraid to name. He told me that evening, in the plain way he had finally learned from her, that he intended to ask her to marry him. He said it the way he might report a decision about drainage or timber contracts, except that his voice was not quite even, and he knew I noticed. "You are afraid she will say no," I said. "I am afraid," he said, "that I will not deserve yes." I told him he was improving. He proposed the following morning on the bridge, which was his idea of poetry. She said yes before he finished the sentence, which surprised him and pleased him and left him without words for the first time in his life. I was there for that too. I am glad I was. She became the Duchess of Hawksmere before the year was out, and the proudest thing my brother ever built was the life he made beside a woman whose first gift to him was the truth, plainly told, without waiting to be invited.